Hey everybody, JT here. So tonight, I didn't think of posting another video in the same week, but here we are. There's a topic that's been kind of on my mind for a while, and I wanted to talk about it. So if you're watching this channel, this is probably the one thing that, out of all the things that I talk about, that I'm a huge expert on. And that's losing and making mistakes. And I want to talk about tonight why this is important and how you can learn from them. So the reality is, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a medium player, or whether you're an expert, you are making mistakes. You may not know it, but you are. And it's important to be able to find out what those mistakes are and how to learn from them. Tendency that I see a lot of players make is looking at a hand and saying that it's a brick, or they lost because their opponent drew the right card off the top, or their opponent got lucky, and that's why they lost. And the harsh reality is that that's just not true. There are definitely a percentage of games that you lose because you draw a brick hand. That's definitely the case. But the amount of games that are actual bricks versus the amount of games where you drew bad but just didn't play your hand properly, there's a much bigger gap there than you might think. So when you draw a bad hand, you need to be able to play with it. You need to be able to determine what your win condition is, and you need to play to that. And that has to be the game plan. Like, we talked about game plans, and every time you draw your cards, you need to make a game plan. Like, the reality is that when you look at your cards, you're not going to open Insane every single game. You're not going to open your combo, like back in wind-up format. You're not going to open Magician Shark every single game. There's going to be some games where you open wind-up Rabbit and Traps, and you need to be able to learn how to play with those. Like, today's decks are very combo-centric, and you're not going to open your combo every single game. So you need to learn how to play your deck without it. And you need to be able to learn how to play. Like last time, I talked about phases of the game. You need to be able to figure out how to play when you're stuck in the early game and your opponent is not. Your opponent's moved on to the mid game and their deck is going. And you need to be able to figure out how to catch up, because those games aren't all auto losses. You just need to know how to figure out how to play to it. So there's been a countless number of games where I've looked at my hand and I've said, yeah, this hand's terrible, but I have a win condition and I need to play to it. The thing is that every one of your hands is a puzzle. You need to figure out how your answers line up to your opponent's threats and how your threats line up against potential answers. I'll expand on what more I mean by that, but basically just like your defensive cards with their offensive cards and the opposite for your threats versus their answers, potentially. So identifying a win condition is something you need to do. Like, definitely knowing your deck's main combos, like, that's important. But you need to figure out how to be able to play. How to play to what outs you might be able to draw. How to be able to play around what things your opponent might draw. Like, there's been a countless number of games where I'll say to myself, you know what, if my opponent draws this card, I lose. And there's some times where you're not going to be able to play around that, and that's fine. But there's going to be some games where decisions you'll make early in the game will snowball back to the late game. And you might have been able to protect yourself from that and not even having realized it. So after games, I'll often think to myself, like, what I did right versus what I did wrong, whether I've won or lost that game. Because the reality is that no player plays 100% optimally. It just does not happen. Even the best players in the world make mistakes. And the best players in the world have to start somewhere. Just like you. If you're watching this video and you're just starting to learn and you're just trying to make that journey towards being a competitive player, that's great. You're who this video is for. You're who all my videos are for. Because I want to help people bridge that gap to get to that next step. Like, when I first started playing, after a hiatus, I came back after like 10 years during like late 2009, early 2010. And I would just get steamrolled by like a ton of people. Because everyone's playing like meta decks with like Lightsworn and stuff. And I was just playing this terrible Monarch deck. Like, it was so bad. And I just lost all the time. But then one week, I won my first locals First locals win ever. And it was an amazing feeling. And I wanted more. So I just kept trying to learn. I still keep trying to learn. Because eventually I have a goal of getting a YCS top. And I came very close. And when I tell you that I know what it's like to lose and I know what it's like to make mistakes, a lot of it kind of culminated with this story. So YCS Toronto of 2017, I've talked about this and I've joked about this a lot. And it's not out of any sense of salt. Like, I'm over whatever salt was there at the time. It's more so just to, first of all, laugh at myself. But second, to illustrate that you've got to be able to unpack your losses and find out why they happened. Because they're not all luck. Basically, I won the die roll, which was super important in this format. This was Zodiac format. So if you won the die roll, you got to do your insane combo before your opponent did, because everyone was playing Zodiac. And I won game 1, lost game 2. So I got to go first game 3, which put me in like an incredibly high percentage chance to win. And throughout doing my combo, I missed a step. I forgot to make Zodiac Broad Bowl to search a free monster. And later on in the game, I ended up losing because I was short that monster. Now, it would be super easy to have said, because on the final turn of the game, if I drew a monster, I was in a good position. I would have been able to be in a good position. But instead, I drew a trap card and I had no monsters and I lost. It would be really easy to say, oh, I got unlucky. I didn't draw a monster. I drew a trap. I bricked. That's why I lost. But the reality is that was not the case. I lost because I messed up. I came super close to getting that YCS top. I just had to win that round, and I was in the top, guaranteed. But I didn't lose because I got unlucky. I lost because I made a mistake. And if you want to grow, if you want to get better, you've got to accept that. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose a lot. You're going to go to locals. You're going to lose, you'll go 1x, like you'll go X3 or X2 or whatever, like every week for a long time. There's going to be people who are going to your locals who are going to top and they're going to win consistently, and you're not going to immediately be able to piece together why. And that's okay. The important thing is to not get discouraged and to try and learn, because learning does not happen all at once. You need to make small incremental improvements and you need to put the work in. If you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. There's a lot of skills that will be able to slowly increase your win percentage over time. Like as an individual, your individual win percentage. And eventually, you're going to see those start to add up. There will be situations where you make an improvement and you'll be like, oh wow, that was fantastic. Like bluffing. Not saying you should bluff all the time, but the first time where I got to do Pro Storm, like which is where you set Heavy Storm to try and lull your opponent into setting multiple back rows so that you can just flip and go like +2 or +1 or something. Like the first time that happened to me, it felt terrible. I was like, oh my god, I just got blown out. But the first time that I did that, it was awesome. And you'll get those experiences. They will come. You just got to be patient. One thing that I really hope that people will take away from this video is being able to take a step back and assess what you did in a game and accept that you did not do everything right. The amount of games where there was absolutely nothing you could do and you lost are so small. It's really important to identify your win condition and identify your role in the game. So part of what I talked about the game plan, and I'll expand in this later on, is when you're making your game plan, you have to decide based on your hand, based on the deck you're playing, based on the deck your opponent's playing, am I the aggressor or is my opponent the aggressor? Now this is something that I read about in an article for Magic called Who's the Beatdown? And it's basically just teaches you how to determine if I'm playing, am I trying to end the game quickly or am I trying to make the game go on longer? Which one of those things gives me the higher percent chance of winning. In a situation where one person's playing aggro and the other person's playing control, that's very easy. Those roles are very easily assigned. The aggressive player is trying to end the game quickly, and the controlling player wants the game to go on longer. But it mixes up a bit when two people are playing the same deck, two people are playing a deck that fills into the same role, or someone's playing a combo deck perhaps. Then it becomes a little more difficult to determine what role you're supposed to be. And thinking about that and figuring out what your win condition is, and whether that's extending the game longer or trying to end it more quickly, that's something else that's going to increase your win percentage. So I talked about losing and trying to learn from it. The important thing is figuring out how to test properly, because if you're playing a lot of games and you're not testing properly, you're not going to get a lot out of it. So I have a couple tricks here that I used and that I still use to try and make myself better. So one thing you can do is find someone who's better than you. Find someone who, first of all, make sure they actually have the time, bandwidth, and are actually willing to help, but reach out to them and try and solicit ideas from them. Try and get their feedback. Try and play some games against them. Ask them why they did something. Ask them why they made a certain play, or why they are playing a certain card. And I think that it's great for you to introduce your own feedback, like saying that you're doing this because of X reason, like as, for lack of a better term, the weaker player. But if you're asking someone for feedback, when they give you that feedback, you need to receive it, and you need to take it to heart. Because you're trusting them as the better player to give you guidance. You may think something is right. They're going to tell you it's wrong, and you need to understand why and accept it and try and add it. Now, like I talked about in my last video, nothing with Yu-Gi-Oh is absolute. There are exceptions to every rule, and there will be situations where the feedback you get is not always going to be 100% relevant, but there are going to be learnings from everything. The other thing you can do to help improve is to find a group of like-minded people. Now, I don't mean playing with your best friends who are playing Dark Magician all the time. Not to knock on Dark Magician, he's cool. But that's not a competitive testing environment necessarily. You want to be able to test with people who want to get better, who want to improve, and who are willing to put in the time to do so, because you can each help level up each other. There will be shortcomings that each of you have. You guys will be able to discuss card choices more robustly. You'll be able to have deeper and richer conversations. It's not to say don't play Yu-Gi-Oh with your friends. It's not what I mean. But if you're looking to get better, I would suggest forming a testing group. That's the best way to do so. Because if you guys all have similar goals, you'll help get each other there. When I was first coming back to the game, when I was first trying to bridge that gap from casual local player to someone who wanted to be competitive, I was on this website that did regular Yu-Gi-Oh leagues online, and I joined a team with people who were at a similar skill level to me, but who wanted to improve. And for a time, we got crushed. We just got regularly beaten, and that was tough to swallow at first, but playing against people who were better and playing with people who had like-minded goals to myself helped me be able to learn and grow at a much more rapid pace than if I had just been playing against random people online or only going to locals. It helped me grow so much quicker. And that's not to say that I've become an expert, because I haven't. But what I'm trying to explain is that I was able to get those incremental little improvements at a much more rapid pace, because I wasn't just working by myself. I was working with other people who were all trying to learn at the same time. We would each pick up different things, and we'd each help each other out. And there was a point in time where I was playing online with some of the better people in the world and being able to hold my own. And it's because I realized that I was making mistakes and I needed to step back and learn why I was making them. So I hope if you've come to this channel, to this series, that you're someone who wants to take that next step and get better. And if so, you're exactly who these videos are for. You're my target audience. Congratulations. And if you take these steps, you'll start to see some incremental changes. They'll be small at first, but eventually you'll start seeing those percentages build up. You're still winning more games at locals. You'll win at locals here and there, and eventually you'll get a regional top. So to kind of consolidate, I guess, what the overall goal of this channel is, it's not necessarily to help you win at locals, but ideally the person who I'm trying to cater content towards is you're someone who's trying to get better. You have yet to top a regionals. I want to get you there. That is my goal with this channel, is you're starting out from the bottom and you're trying to get to a regional top. Now, I can't teach someone how to top a YCS because I haven't done it. So if you want to learn how to top a YCS, you're probably at the wrong place. Or a bigger level premier event or whatever. But I think there's still some good improvements and good learnings that you can maybe take from what I'm talking about. So I hope in the future to be able to have deeper conversations about this stuff. And anything that I've talked about tonight, I'm not trying to lecture anyone. I'm really just trying to set the reality, because sometimes learning is harsh. And this is one of those moments of harsh GT to tell you what the real world is like. So I hope that even though this may have been hard to hear, that you've enjoyed it and that it's given you something to think about, because ultimately I would love to see people improve, because better competition, and this is not to say that I have bad competition now, but what I mean is that coming back to how to get better is that if I'm playing against better people, that'll help me improve more. And ultimately, as a competitive player, that's all you can ever ask for, is to keep being able to improve. So I hope you enjoyed this. I know I went on a long-winded rant again for my podcast with terrible visuals, so I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.